Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Racing Mentor Sponsorship Podcast. I'm here with Toby Trice. How are you today, Toby?
Yeah, Jess, I'm good as always. How are you keeping?
Yeah, really good. Just so buzzed about everything that's going on at the moment. I feel like I say that every week, but just especially buzzed this
Yeah,
week.
to be fair, I
Um,
think we have that common trait.
yeah, positive people, and I hope that comes across in this podcast. I'm here to spread positivity.
Definitely.
So I'm going to jump in with your fun fact, Toby. So
Go ahead.
I think people know this, but I think, again, it's nice and positive. So Toby won Buckmore Park's Driver's Driver of the Year in 2019, so last year. That's
Yeah,
massive.
yeah, it was a bit of a proud moment. I
Yeah,
completely didn't see it coming. I was at the awards night and they were describing this driver, and I was like, "Geez, he's gonna have a good future." And then halfway through sipping a pint of beer, it was like, "What? They've just called my name."
that's
Bit of a
incredible.
yeah, I felt very lucky. Very proud of it for sure. Jess's awesome fun fact this week is actually about her writing books. So Get Paid to Race wasn't actually Jess's first book she wrote. It was her second. The first book she wrote was A Guide to Norfolk.
Yep,
That's pretty
yep.
cool.
Still proudly sits on my bookshelf, and I occasionally look at it and I forget about it.
Really?
So I'll occasionally look at it and be like, "Oh yeah, I wrote that book." Yeah, just because it feels like it was so long ago and it wasn't a big deal. Or it didn't
Okay.
feel like a big deal at the time. And I actually didn't get a copy of it until maybe a couple of years ago, considering I wrote it about 6 years ago.
Oh wow.
So I'd never really seen a physical copy, but it's in hotels all over Norfolk. And during my 30th birthday party, we stayed at a fancy hotel and it was in there.
No, that's
I
nuts.
absolutely lost it. I was like, my book's in this hotel.
I'm famous in Norfolk.
Yeah, it was really weird.
It won't be the last one, Jess, I'm sure.
Oh,
Get Paid to
absolutely
Race
not.
is definitely not the last one, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, that kind of brings me on to the fact that I am writing another book,
There we
or at
go.
least putting the finishing touches to one. Most people who kind of follow me on social media will have seen that I've announced something called the Side Hustle series, because I know that, sponsorship isn't the only way to kind of get paid to race or to, get out on track. And a lot of people have success with running their own businesses and using that to fund their racing career. So I wanted to teach people those skills as well as sponsorship skills. So I'm just finishing off the Side Hustle Roadmap ebook. I just thought an ebook's easier at this stage for everyone. So yeah, that'll be out on the 24th of November, alongside just tons and tons of content between now and January. But you can pre-order that on the Racing Mentor shop if you are so inclined. But I think that's the reason I feel so excited. I love talking about businessy things and how to build side hustles and all of that. So absolutely kind of just raring to go and get all of this content that we've created out there.
Yeah, super buzzed, Jess. I think I think you're like the queen of side hustle, to be fair. We're always chatting between us about different ideas and how we can kind of monetize things. And yeah, I'm super excited to see that all come out, Jess. And certainly over this sort of off season, when we've got a little bit more time as racing drivers, I'm certainly looking forward to going through all that content. So cannot wait. Roll on.
Yeah, exciting stuff. So today we're going to be talking about how to close a sponsorship deal, because I know that a lot of drivers now, from going through Racing Mentor content, have got to the point where they're having meetings with potential sponsors, but just getting over that line can be quite tough. And I feel that there's often a roadblock there, mostly because businesses are careful with their money. So I wanted to do this episode to kind of help people get to that point where they can close a sale effectively and they know what they're doing, and they can identify what a business is talking about or what they're thinking when they are stalling a little bit as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think this episode is going to be quite interesting because I myself are at a point with two sponsors or two potential sponsors where I'm looking to close the deal, and I'm feeling really confident that something's going to happen with them because I can give them so much return. But this is the big, audacious, scary thing, right, of sponsorship. You've kind of done all that networking, you've kind of negotiated everything up to this point. You understand their business, you understand how you can help them, and by this point you should be really confident with regards to what you can offer them. But yeah, the big scary thing of closing the deal and making it happen is such a big thing, Jess, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, your point about confidence is right, because it is actually really scary to say, right, can I have £100,000 now because you're clearly into this. I know what I'm doing. And I think that final point is the scariest part. because
Yeah.
then it becomes real. You actually have to do the work. You have to take an obscene amount of money off someone and give them back value. And that can be quite scary, especially if it's like your first deal. I mean, not everyone is going to go in and suddenly make a 6-figure sponsorship sale, but at any point in your career, just getting, I suppose it's, you might have confidence in what you're offering because you've done the research, you've done the work, you've maybe practiced on some smaller sponsors, but then it's real, like especially with large amounts of money, then it has to be your career, looking after sponsors and, you know, doing the racing driver thing. And it's just a nerve-wracking prospect for the future. So I think if we can give people listening like a really like clear process of what closing a sale looks like, you can then probably look past the emotions of the situation and just, you know, do your job, get the money, go racing, do a good job for the sponsor.
That's the important thing, right?
Yeah. So let's just kind of recap on the sales process. Just for anyone that we do have a sales tips podcast episode. So it might be worth listening back to that if you're not at the closing the sales stage yet. So typically you would have had meetings with a potential sponsor by this stage. You'll have talked about the benefits of what you offer. They should already be excited about what you're doing. They should be asking questions about how they can get involved and making it clear that this is something that they're going to work into their future. Toby, when you're at the point of like about to close a sale, how does the vibe change between you and the potential sponsor? How do you know that they're pretty much ready to buy?
Well, I think they just give you this kind of impression that, you know, the previous experience I've had where I've closed the sale, it's just been very much a case of like, they want to go ahead. Like you get this kind of positive vibe from them that they're as excited as you are. And that kind of energy just kind of feels right.
Yeah.
But they often say things that actually are clear signals for you to say, you know, I want to go ahead, you know, things like, I can really see this working for my business.
Mm.
I'm sure this is going to work out for us. You know, all those kind of things that you just think, well, they're fully aware of the benefits that you've explained and how it's going to help their business. They're telling you that they're good to go. That's your cue to say, right, let's get this done.
Yeah. And actually, like closing a sale doesn't have to be complicated because more
No.
often than not, if you're listening to your sponsor, you'll get buying signals. So the example I always use is if you're offering a track day or hospitality and they are choosing like which track they want to come to or which date they want to come to, they've pretty much made a decision,
Yeah.
because that is something that they need to think about after they've paid and after you're on board with them. So I always kind of look at that as a really nice buying signal, but there are others as well. Anything where they're talking about the future or giving you more ideas of how you can work together, things like that, are really, really clear buying signals. So I think it's really, really important to listen to what they're saying, because if they give you a buying signal that says, yes, we want to do this thing, you know, further down the line, it's, you know, just one part of what you're pitching, you can say, great, when can we get a contract sorted out? Because if they're ready to go and they're thinking about the future, then they're probably ready to sign on the dotted line. Obviously the only issue there is if you then have to go through a board or a CEO or someone else in the company that hasn't got to that point, or they haven't even heard of what it is, you know, maybe someone in the marketing department is pitching to them. So it's not always that simple, but once you've sold to your contact, it's usually their job to sell it to the board or the higher ups or whoever it might be.
Yeah.
um Go
Sorry,
on,
Jess,
Toby.
and just so on that note, then, so there might come a point during that meeting of closing the sale that you might feel that it's not quite going the way that you want it. And I'm sure, Jess, you may have had these sort of kind of situations in the past where they're very interested in the benefits, but they're not quite given the signals that they want to go ahead like right now. So
Yeah.
is there any particular questions you think that are worth asking at that point so that you can get the kind of most from it, and really understand that closing the deal with them is the right thing to do?
Yeah, so I if I was getting kind of like a strange vibe for them where they're kind of bought in, but they're not being like super excited about everything, I would ask them, you know, what, you know, is there anything that could be a challenge to this deal, or are there any roadblocks that we need to look at before we go ahead? Is there anything that we Actually, a question that I used recently is there anything stopping us from signing this contract today, other than probably that we didn't have a contract? But that's a good question, because that will bring out the truth of the situation.
Yeah.
Or, our managing director's not sure about this, and it will bring out those objections, like we talked about a few episodes ago, episode 18. We talked about objection handling and how you can kind of get to the root of the problem. But if they're being quite closed off, they might not tell you the problem up front. So asking questions like that, what's stopping this going ahead? You can then dig deeper into whatever that objection is. Is it that they don't see value? Usually it is. Is it that you need to rethink some of the things that you've offered? Get down to the kind of the root of that problem, and it should help you kind of get around it. So if it is, that someone higher up isn't sure, then it's down to you to say, right, let's have a meeting. I'll explain everything, and then you can make your decision from there. Because usually, once someone gets face to face with you, they're going to like you. They're going to be able to really buy into the story that you're telling and the benefits that you offer.
Exactly. And just be confident with it. I mean, it's quite a scary thing having kind of a no. And I think most people are quite worried of the fact that they might not be getting the vibe that this sponsor is going to go ahead with a deal. So they get nervous of the fact that they might get the no. That might not necessarily be the case. And be confident in respect of asking kind of what objections they have. I would go back to that kind of previous podcast, yes. And yeah, just ask the questions and find out why. Be comfortable with that, and you can give plenty back, because you know of what sponsors benefits you can give to them, and in return then you know that you've got a good return for them to say, look, this is worth your while, you're not wasting their time, that's why you're sat there, and be confident in that.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think if you've done your research, if you've really kind of planned out what you're offering and you know that there's value there, you kind of are in the winning position. Like you kind of can control the situation, because you can always come back to those benefits.
Yeah.
And they're probably the thing that would have sold the potential sponsor on working with you in the first place. So it's always good to come back to them, because, if you're talking about large sums of money relative to the size of the business, then, it can be scary for that person to say, yes, let's go ahead. And they just need to be reminded why it's a good idea for them to go ahead. So I always like to ask those questions, what's stopping us? Listen to their objection, let them know that they've been heard, and then repeat the benefits back.
Oh, and what if, Jess, like right now, because obviously at the moment the economy is a little bit strange, right? Obviously COVID's still kind of kicking around, and it is a bit of an odd time, and money might be quite a common sort of objection as part of closing the deal. So have you got any tips around that? Because I'm in the position myself right now where if I'm talking to a couple of sponsors, they're really on board with kind of how it's going to benefit them and how it's going to work for their business. But we are kind of at that negotiating stage now where the amount of money and how we're exactly going to work together and what key parts they're going to take from the proposal I've given them. Have you got any tips around that, Jess?
So this is tricky, because if you don't have a budget from a sponsor, then it's going to be really difficult to work out what you can offer them. So I always like to go in high. Like, if I could give you everything, this is how much it would cost. When they come back and say that's too much money, then it's kind of down to you to say, okay, I want to make this as valuable for you as possible. How do we do that? And let it kind of go back to them. Oh, we could maybe do this, and we'd like to do that. And just kind of, instead of saying what's your budget, because a lot of people will go, well, I don't know, maybe come back to us with another pitch. And that's just kind of annoying, because again, you're just kind of like shooting in the dark. So ask them what would they find most value in, and if they choose like maybe 75% of the things that are in your original proposal, maybe you can then work the cost down from there and just include those things. But the nice thing about going in high is that whatever kind of deal you settle on from there, they'll probably see it as like, a great deal for them, where they're going to get a lot of value. Which is why I'd always suggest going in high. It's unlikely that you'll scare them off. You'll always be able to reopen that line of communication of, it doesn't have to be this much, but I wanted to give you the most value as possible. So I'd always bring it back round to value and ask them those questions of, where do you see this going? What do you want this to look like? And what will that success look like in the future? because it might be that they do have to be out of pocket for a year while this process gets going. And as business people, they should know that. So it's kind of down to just seeing where they think this will go in the future. I think is a big part of this.
Yeah, definitely. Just a strange analogy. It just comes to my head. I'm not sure if this actually fits, but just put yourself in their situation in respect of buying something like a car. When you're looking at all the optional extras, you might think, "Oh, I really want that. I really need this," and you can spend thousands and thousands of pounds on optional extras that might not be actually worthwhile to you, or they might be, but you just can't afford them. And you tend to find something that works for you in your kind of price range, that the value that you're looking to purchase that car for. I don't know if that's right, Jess, but I'm just trying to put a comparison of just putting yourself into the sponsor's shoes, is that they might see all the benefits that you're offering as good for their business. And they might want to take advantage of all those things, but it's just about finding something that works for them in regards to their available budget that they've got. And the most important things that are going to be working towards their goals and their sales forecasts and stuff. So it's just just ask questions and find out exactly what are the key things for them that's going to work, and then you can sort of work downwards from your sort of upper end of your sponsorship proposal.
And I think you can kind of lean on the 80-20 rule here. And I love this whole principle of, 20% of the work that you do will yield 80% of the result. So it could be that there's loads of stuff in your initial pitch that are just nice to have that actually won't make that much impact. So, things like, unless you've got a huge social following, social media is often like that. So if you're, pinning thousands of pounds on doing X amount of social posts per month, you can probably get rid of that because it probably won't have as much impact as you hope it will. But also it's really time consuming for you. So I would look at it in that way. Are there things that you would rather not do that are really time consuming to you as a driver when you've got everything else on? They should be the first things to go from the deal when you are trying to negotiate, if they need you to bring the price down. But in an ideal world, you would have gone in high enough that there is a bit of wiggle room. And I would never tell a sponsor that, but I think there should be that kind of maneuverability within the number that you went with in the first case, because then you can sound like you're doing them a solid, because you really want to work with them and you're really excited about the content and the activities that you've got planned.
Yeah, and it's quite nice to do a deal, right?
Yeah,
it also feels positive. So yeah,
exactly.
it's all part of the negotiation process and sales process.
And I think a lot of anyone who's kind of new to sales, one of the biggest mistakes they make is they don't listen enough to their prospect, to the person they're selling to, because they miss asking for the sale. Sometimes it really is as simple as, right, let's sign on the dotted line, or like, what's the timeline for getting this finalized? Questions like that, obviously depending on the size of the business. I think that you might miss those buying signals, like that excitement over the future. But yeah, sometimes just ask for the sale. Just say, right, let's go. I'll get a contract over to you next week. And if they say, oh, we're not ready, then you go back a bit in the process. You deal with their objections, etc. But I think a lot of the time you can actually be really forthright. You can say, right, this all sounds great. We've decided, we've landed on this this figure. These are all the benefits. I will send a contract over to you next week. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah.
And I think that's really valuable, and a lot of people miss that. But of course, with any kind of negotiation process or closing process, you can get to a point where you do need to take a step back. If they're getting, you don't want to necessarily push it. You don't want to be a pushy salesperson. So I think it's really important to know when to take that step back and just let them work it out for themselves with a little bit of contact.
Yeah,
I think.
I think you're right, Jess, and I think I always come back to this point about relationship building. If you know that sponsor really well, and you've got a good rapport relationship with that person, you should know what the kind of vibes they're saying, because by this point you've probably met them 2 or 3 times, plenty of emails, phone calls, etc. And it should just be obvious. I think just on my previous experiences that I've managed to close deals with, it was really obvious when it was like, right, should we get this going? Should we start? You know, who do I need to contact to get the contract sorted out? How can we get this moving forward? All those kind of things. And yeah, just kind of that positive vibe that you get from that person that you're sat in front of. If you're confident in respect of the benefits that you're going to provide them and the service that you're going to provide them in return, obviously for the payment, if you're both happy with that, then like, let's go. Let's make the next season awesome.
Exactly. And I think my experiences have been very similar, because it all comes down to the relationship building that you did at the start of this process.
Yeah.
You need to be confident in your relationship with a person or group of people to be able to say, right, we need to sign on the dotted line, because I need to get this livery sorted out. I need to get a car, I need to, pay entry fees, whatever it is. I think you need to have that confidence in your contact to know that you can have those candid conversations. And it's going to be much easier to kind of get to like the root of an objection as well. So it really helps to move the process along much more quickly and easily if you have done that relationship building kind of stuff at the beginning of the process.
Yeah, and just a quick point for me from my experiences, because when I get nervous about closing deals, because it's a big moment, right? It's you're going racing, which is obviously what you want to do, which is why you're there in the first place. B, you've got so much work now to do for that sponsor, that like that's also so exciting, and kind of what the future holds for you both, and where it's going to go is almost, in some respects, it's not unknown, because you know what you can provide to them, but like it's super exciting, but at the same time it's quite a scary thing, because you're committing to quite a big project with them. But I always just remember about my previous experience and previous wins, just that feeling of like having that person sort of shake hands with you, and the times before where I've kind of closed a deal down with someone, we've got started, and the fact that because I feel confident now in what I delivered to my previous sponsors last year or last season 2019, and I'm currently doing with my current sponsors, that gives me more confidence to go, do you know what, I'm really confident I can give this the right thing for this sponsor, and I know I can deliver. So I guess in respect of kind of building your confidence up for closing the sale, is kind of just have a look back on your previous experiences with sponsors, think about success stories, and just get your mindset in a positive frame of mind, because that will really, really help you when it comes to closing the sale.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just kind of reminded me that over the last 2 months, I've closed 5 big deals
Nice.
just within my other business. And everyone was like, the one after the other, they just got easier because I just had more and more confidence from each one. And I think like the takeaway there for racing drivers is that, maybe start small, close a couple of small deals before you go in for the kill on the really big one, because that kind of added confidence of making those small deals is going to make it so much easier to close the big one.
It definitely makes a difference. Like,
Yeah.
think back to, for racing drivers that haven't finalized their first deal yet, there's people listening to this podcast that are probably just looking into sponsorship this year. Think about your first race and just how nervous you was. I remember sat on the start line at Snetterton for my first race, and like my clutch foot was it was kangarooing. I was nervous, so scared. And by kind of as each race that I'd done went on, I kind of felt more confident and more comfortable in the car. I knew what I could do. I knew I could launch this car off the start line, and all of a sudden, like the nerves, yeah, they're there, but you've got a better way of sort of containing them and making it a more kind of positive direction. And I think it's kind of a strange analogy, but I think kind of closing the deal was very much the same thing. It's the big moment. It's the point where you're about to now take this forward with that sponsor and make the next 12 months or however long you've agreed totally awesome. And yeah, like embrace it. It's awesome.
Yeah, and that's actually really good advice in terms of like preparing for a meeting. It's all about kind of getting your head in the game and like preparing, your mindset as much as, the physical stuff that you need, whether that's a presentation or just remembering the benefits or anything like that, is, treat it like you would a race. Like take that time to like mentally prepare. And I also really think that you're totally correct here, Toby, and thinking back about all those previous wins as well can really set you up for a meeting. And I think we talked about this in the objections episode as well, but come prepared for them saying that they're not ready to go ahead. Even if you think this is the day that you're going to close the sale, be prepared with those objections so you can turn them around, because you can turn objections around in, just a couple of, really well thought out points that go back to the benefits and the value that you offer.
Exactly. Yeah. Good luck, everyone. Is
Yeah.
what I say. I'm not sure if you want to wrap up there, Jess, but yeah, good luck. I'm very much in this point of process with a couple of sponsors right now, so I know exactly how the listeners are feeling. I know Jess is exactly the same. She's currently doing deals herself with regards to what she's up to. So we're all in this boat, and we're all here to share our experiences with each other. And yeah, if you've got some wins, it would be great to hear how you've maybe overcome an objection and what kind of deals you've landed. And yeah, Jess and I are very excited to hear how you guys get on.
Yeah, and actually, we've had a few people sharing their wins in the sponsorship community on Facebook lately, and I love that. I love seeing people succeed.
Yes, mega.
Yeah, so feel free to come and share your wins, even if it's just getting a meeting with a sponsor. It doesn't necessarily have to be the whole deal, although please do share that with us. So yeah, do head on to the Racing Mentor sponsorship community on Facebook, share your wins, or just come and congratulate other people for theirs. It might give you some inspiration as well.
Yeah, it's a good resource.
Yeah.
Good luck, everyone.
So let's jump into our driver of the week. This is actually someone that we have mentioned on the podcast before. So it's Doug Idle, who is he races karts, but he's also a sim racer in a really like snazzy Corvette. And I just feel like his Instagram has really just elevated recently. He's got like this really cool niche, and this is what we've mentioned before of he always has a beer after a sim race. And I think maybe I'm biased because I like beer too, but it's just really interesting seeing there's all the sim racing stuff, what he's doing on track, things about cars and karts, but then all interspersed with these beer reviews. And I love it, and I've bought so many beers because of Doug's recommendations on Instagram, which shows at least in a small way he is an influencer, and I just think that's really powerful. But maybe over the last month or so, his graphics have just got really on point, like really well branded. His little story icons look great. So yeah, a very worthy driver of the week this week.
Yeah, I think so. I think I like the beer thing actually.
I do.
I think he makes that look really cool. He's definitely kind of learned a lot from obviously what he's done with you, Jess.
Hmm.
And it's super strong. Like he's got like a brand going on. So I'm sure I'm sure there you can look at kind of beer sponsorships because he seems to be doing the right thing for promoting beers, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's really cool. And like you say, if you're actually drinking off his recommendations, then
Exactly.
clearly something's going well. There you go.
Yeah.
It just shows sponsorship works. But yeah, he's maybe not sponsored yet, but that's certainly something he could look at going forward because clearly he's influential for you.
yeah, exactly. So congratulations, Doug, and keep it up. Keep recommending beers to me and the rest of your Instagram followers.
Yeah, definitely. And I look forward to maybe racing you online at some point because I've recently started sim racing myself. I've got some more content coming out about what I'm up to in the sim racing world. But yeah, anyone that fancies a little session online at some point, I'd love to join you. Maybe we should do like an RM community sort of esports event race, Jess. I don't know if that's something we can do, but
Yeah. If you know how to set that up, I will, I'll promote it. I can get my wheel and pedals down. I'll have a go. I can let you all
dust
beat
them
me.
off. It's when you beat us, Jess, that we're all like, okay, well.
I'm going to get some like sneaky coaching ahead of time because I am rubbish.
That could be quite cool. Maybe we should look at doing that.
Yeah, maybe that can be like something to do in like the Christmas break or something.
Yeah.
It might be quite fun. All right, guys, watch this space. Apparently that's something we're doing now.
Just sign us up to it.
Yeah. Great. Awesome. So thank you everyone for listening. As always, feel free to ask us any questions over on social media. But next week we're going to be talking a bit about how motorsport sponsorship has changed over the years. And I'm quite excited about this episode. And I know that at the beginning of Get Paid to Race, I talked about, how motorsport sponsorship has changed, but I'm looking forward to having, a great discussion with you, Toby, about this topic.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Lots to talk about kind of old and new and where things are going. So
Exactly.
yeah, I look forward to that one.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And we will see you next week.
Yeah, take care.